You are listening to KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University, and you are tuned in to the very first edition of the Golden Hour. My name is Tommy Scuderi, and this is your weekly home for all things roundups, interviews, discussions, and all things Kutztown sports. An hour-long program here on KUR. You're listening to the very first edition. Happy to be here with you all. Thank you all for listening. And we're going to start things off with the Kutztown field hockey team. The off-season is coming to a close for the fall sports. Things kick off next week with two athletic events on campus. That'll be next Thursday. That'll be the field hockey team taking on Southern New Hampshire at 2 p.m., and then the football team taking on Assumption at 7 p.m., both at home here at Kutztown University to get those seasons started. Kutztown, like I said, is September 4th at 2 p.m. against Southern New Hampshire. Kutztown field hockey coming off two back-to-back national championship game appearances. They won in 2023, beating East Stroudsburg, and then fell just short against St. Anselm University last year in overtime by a score of 1-0 after fighting their way back to the national championship game, but unfortunately coming up just a little bit short in capturing their second national championship in 2 years. But the elusive feat for this Kutztown team has been the PSAC title, which is a little bit funny when you talk about their back-to-back, have appeared in that back-to-back national championship games. The fact that they haven't won the conference title is a little bit of a surprise, but that really just speaks to, if you have not watched a lot of Kutztown field hockey, just how tough that conference is. You have teams like Shippensburg, East Stroudsburg, Millersville, to name a few. IUP is up there, Mansfield, Westchester, tons of nationally ranked teams in that PSAC conference there. That makes winning a PSAC championship so difficult. So just kind of recapping last year, Kutztown, they started off with a bang. They were picked number one in the preseason in the 2024 rankings, obviously being the defending national champions at that point. They saw St. Anselm to open up their season. That time it was on September 5th, and they won 4-0. St. Anselm would get their get-back in the national championship game to end the year. So the year opened and closed with those two teams seeing one another. St. Anselm got the win when it counts. They went on to beat St. Michael's and Southern Connecticut State 5-0 and 7-0, respectively. Southern New Hampshire, who they will see to open this year, they beat 5-2. That one was in Manchester. Manchester, not the English version, the United States town. That was by a score 5-2. Then they went on to beat Bentley 5-1, and their first loss came against really what has been a common foe in Shippensburg. Shippensburg was the number 2 team in the country at that point. They came to Andre Reed Stadium and handed Kutztown their first loss of the year in 2024 by a score of 2-0. Kutztown would respond with a win on the road in overtime against Millersville, picking up a win against number 3 ranked East Stroudsburg 4-3, two back-to-back overtime games, one on the road, one at home. Here in late September, early October, they would beat IUP in a thriller on Family Day. That was a game I was actually present for, and it felt like it was going to go on forever. Went into shootouts, and both teams, had one apiece before the 6th shot was scored by Kutztown, and then the save by goaltender for KU. Then they went on to Bloomsburg, the number 4 team in the country. You could see the gauntlet, really, that this conference is. They had the number 2, 3, and 4 team in the country in a couple-week stretch. Beat Bloomsburg 2-1. Beat Frostburg State 6-0. Again saw Shippensburg, this time in a sanctioned conference matchup. The one prior was a out-of-conference matchup just because of the way the scheduling worked out. And they lost again, this time to number 1 ranked Shippensburg on the road in Shippensburg by a score of 2-3. Went back and, again, tough loss against Mansfield and Westchester. So 3 straight losses in late October for that Kutztown field hockey team. They lost to Mansfield 2-1, Westchester 2-3, another overtime game, and this time an overtime loss, before rounding out the regular season with wins over Slippery Rock, Millersville, and Roberts Wesleyan University. That took them to the PSAC tournament, where they were able to get some revenge over Mansfield. That one in a 3-1 shootout victory over the Marauders, and again fell to East Stroudsburg in the PSAC semifinals, which was hosted by Shippensburg University, which was the 1 seed in the conference. East Stroudsburg would go on to fall in the PSAC tournament, which would set up the Division II Field Hockey National Championships, where Southern New Hampshire came to town. Kutztown beat them 2-1 in double overtime. Kutztown would finally beat Shippensburg when it mattered by a score of 4-3 in, I should say when it mattered most, by a score of 4-3 in South Carolina, and then would fall to St. Anselm in the national championship game to come up just short in 2024. In 2023, it really mirrored the same. The season was very, similar. They went 19-3. They were certainly more dominant in the regular season, was Kutztown in that national championship winning season. But they still lost to Shippensburg twice in the regular season, once in the regular season and once in the PSAC tournament, before eventually getting the win again in the national tournament against Shippensburg to head to the national championship game, where in 2023 they were able, to obviously come away with the title in that one to bring the first national championship to Kutztown in the athletic fields anyway. So now moving over to the 2025 schedule, it looks relatively similar to what we've seen. They have out-of-conference appearances at the Mansfield Fall Classic against Southern Connecticut State and St. Michael's after opening their season against Southern New Hampshire. Then they will host Wingate, IUP, DeUville University, and then Millersville before heading back on the road to Mansfield, Roberts Wesleyan. Roberts Wesleyan is only in their third year as a program. It's part of an agreement between the two schools to, get Roberts Wesleyan on their feet. Division II field hockey is not as prominent really as it should be. The Division III and D1 level, there's schools all over, but at the D2, there's only really 30 or so schools that play at the Division II level. So anytime you can see the game growing there is always great. And Kutztown will head out to East Stroudsburg. They will host Bloomsburg at Andre Reed. They go out to IUP. Will host Westchester and Slippery Rock on Senior Day on October 18th. That's always a fun matchup, Kutztown and Slippery Rock, both in football and in field hockey. Millersville on the road. Frostburg State, they head out to Maryville on October 26th. And then in a game that I imagine will probably decide maybe not the conference, but certainly always has playoff implications. They will host Shippensburg on November 1st in the last game of the regular season against, at home on Andre Reed. And that's a game that will probably, if I had to guess what history tells me, will have some pretty serious playoff implications as we head into the conference and then hopefully for Kutztown, the national championship tournaments again. So that is what the 2025 season likes, but what is happening really with the roster? Kutztown has a lot more youth than we've seen in the last couple of years. They graduated a ton of talent. Names like Sarah Gatehouse, Juliana Donato, Greeley McGeehee come to mind. McGeehee, who had that game winner against East Stroudsburg to secure the first national championship for Kutztown, has actually now joined the coaching staff as an assistant coach for head coach Marcy Schuing, who will be on the program at some point. We are working out details. Original plan was to try and have her on today for the inaugural Golden Hour, but did not work out scheduling-wise. Very busy coach, so we'll have her on at some point. We have some great questions for her. Always very kind. We've spoken all throughout last year, throughout that journey of the 2024 season. A great coach, very kind, very willing to sit down for these types of things. So we will have Coach Marcy Schuing on the Golden Hour at some point throughout this year. Stay tuned for a little more details for that while we work out some things behind the scenes. But a dominant coach, I would imagine, if she were here, she would say that she has a ton of faith in her team. She recruits very well. She's always recruited relatively local. Some of her players will come from farther away, but I remember when I talked to Coach Schuing last year about her recruiting philosophy, she doesn't look really too hard at what positions players play. She's looking for not only athletic qualities but personal qualities as well. They'll move players around, from a lot of times a midfielder will go back to play defense. A defender really should be playing forward. All kinds of changes that will happen once the adjustment comes in to the college game. At the Division II level. but really players from around this area that want to be a part of the school. Coach Ewing has talked in the past about Kutztown was always her dream job, even back when she played. She played, I believe it was for Millersville, as a player when she played field hockey. Every time she would visit Kutztown, she would say to her teammates, like, I want to coach here. And now, obviously, has been here for a number of years, has led the program to the highest of highs, and now has a bit of a new era ahead of her, as this is one of the younger rosters she's had in quite some time. A lot of sophomores, a lot of freshmen making up the student, a handful of seniors, a grad student. It just as you look at the roster here. So we'll talk, when we talk to Coach Ewing, I'm sure she'll have plenty of insight as to how the team's looking in the offseason and depending on when we talk to her, how the first couple of games have gone. But definitely some exciting things for this Kutztown field hockey team. Lots of things to be excited about, coming off 2 great seasons and a chance to really put forward a legacy and start a dynasty here at Andre Reed Stadium and beyond for this Kutztown team. So a lot of things to be excited about as the countdown to September 4th begins for that home opener. But also on September 4th, kind of shifts gears here, is the home opener for the Kutztown football team, who have had a lot of success in their own right. Made it to the National Final Four in 2023, the same year that Kutztown field hockey took home the national championship. A little bit of I think, an early exit than a lot of us expected in 2024, as they ultimately fell to Slippery Rock. That was in the second round, the quarterfinals of the NCAA national tournament. And really, I think if you were to ask, what the expectations are, certainly for myself, being involved on the radio team for Kutztown, I've, called a number of games, with them on the radio. I was on the live stream broadcast a few times. So for my own research and, it's kind of being around the team, I certainly did not think they were going to lose that Slippery Rock game. I think they had all the momentum in the world. They had won like 15 straight regular season games moving up to that point. They were 11-0. They went unbeaten in the regular season. They took the PSAC championship against California University of Pennsylvania. That was on the road, 21-14, and had a bye going into that Slippery Rock game. And Coach Clemens, we talked to him, earlier in the week before that game. He felt confident in his guys. He was glad to have the rest. But Slippery Rock, they came off the bus with some fury, and they ended up, catching Kutztown by surprise, taking them to overtime, and Kutztown did what they were supposed to, having the ball first, getting, down, punching it in, elected to go for the extra point, and then Slippery Rock had, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like a 3rd and 20-something, out of field goal range, backs against the wall, and just an unfortunate face mask. Allowed Slippery Rock to get the first down, and eventually they drove back in overtime, scored, elected to go for 2, ran a hook and ladder, a bit of a trick play, and got the 2-point conversion to really stun Kutztown in the second rounds of the NCAA Football National Championship Tournament, and sent the Golden Bears home early in a season that really it seemed like the sky could be the limit for Golden Bears football. The 1-0 mantra that Coach Clemens and the rest of the team has really preached. Had a ton of success, but ultimately, it's hard to call a season where you win your conference in dominant fashion not a success. I would certainly am not saying it was a disappointment by any means, but I think when you looked at what the expectations were, when you looked at what that squad kind of the aggression that they played with, the heart that team played with, they kind of get sent home against Slippery Rock like that on their own turf. Certainly left a bad taste in the mouth, I would imagine, of the rest of the team going into the offseason. It would be hard to imagine that Slippery Rock is not a team that is circled on the sheet should Kutztown get a chance to play them once again. Just taking a peek at the 2025 schedule for the KU football team. They have their home opener again September 4th. That is against Assumption. 3rd year in a row that they've opened with Assumption. 2nd year in a row it will be a Thursday night home opener. Assumption did give Kutztown some problems in 2023 in that year where they really went the distance. They dropped the first 2 games, but, from there, it's, Kutztown went on an absolute roll and certainly did not allow that to damper the rest of their season in that year. Just taking a brief look to history. It was a very physical game last year to start off the year, which I think kind of, at least, when I was watching it down on the sidelines, that, I could feel the physicality. And I got excited for the year because I could tell that this KU team, it was something special, and it certainly was. Kutztown does, trail the all-time deficit. They have 4 wins to Assumption's 5 in the history of those 2 schools. Kutztown did, win in 2024. Last year, they were 24-6 dominant fashion. Dropped in 2023 to 31-20, and then 3-0 in 2022. Going back, 2021, they won 19-0, 54-16 in 2019, and then 34-28 in 2018. So these schools have played each other every year since 2015, with the exception of that 2020 season, but we all know how much football was played in 2020. But so certainly some familiar foes, out of conference foes, but familiar foes nonetheless, as we kind of take a peek at the rest of the schedule here for this Kutztown football team. So they open against Assumption, then they go on the road to Edinburgh. That is on September 13th. So a bit of a lengthier break after that September 4th opener. It takes some time for Kutztown to get back on the field. Then they'll be back home against Gannon on September 20th. That will be Family Day. So, remember to bring your families up. Lots of fun activities always happen in there against Gannon. Then they'll head out to West Virginia to face Shepherd out of the PSAC East. Back home to host Shippensburg in the Pink game at Andre Reed. Back out on the road to Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. Back home against Millersville on October 18th. October 25th, they go out to Westchester. November 1st, Military Appreciation Day at home against East Stroudsburg, which East Stroudsburg has always been a fantastic game for Kutztown. I know last year I was lucky enough to head out to East Stroudsburg and cover that game here on KUR, and that was an exciting game. East Stroudsburg has some great facilities, a great team as well. Kutztown went down 14-0 in the first quarter, and it looked like kind of that unbreakable season might have ended early in week 4, but, they powered back. They put a great game, ended up winning, I think it was 28-21, just off the top of my head. I can fact-check that real fast. Just look at the history of the matchup there. Take a peek. It was 27-21, so I think there was an extra point missed. But ultimately fought back and won. There's been some great games against the Warriors in the past, and I think that will continue this year as well. That will be on November 1st. That's a noon game. Then out to Bloomsburg on November 8th, the final PSAC East matchup of the year. And then back home against IUP on Senior Day on November 15th to round out the regular season. And hopefully for Kutztown, start the playoff run for them. But, obviously that all depends on how the regular season goes. Kind of taking a peek at the roster, the biggest turnover that you really can tell is wide receiver. Players like Makai Gibson, Sincere Thomas, 2 of some of the top receiving threats, have transferred out. A couple of graduations in that room as well. Have left the room looking a little bit fresh, but still a lot of things to like when you're looking at this roster. Noah Crisilla is a name that really stands out to me as someone I really took a increased role. Honestly, Sincere Thomas went down with an injury midway through the season. Noah Crisilla was the one that stepped in and took over that return man kind of slot receiver position, and he was someone that really impressed me, and I think impressed the coaching staff as well, because his play time really started to shoot up. Once he got his opportunity, he never really looked back. And it seems like he will be a big part of this offense going in to this 2025 season. Still conversations that will have to be had with the coaching staff from us here on KUR to learn a little bit more. Obviously, at the college level, there's not as much coverage as you might see in training camp for NFL teams, where you can see who's getting used and when. At the D2 level, that's the information is a little bit more scarce, so we have to do a bit more speculation than those guys have to do. But I would imagine Noah Crisilla would be a pretty big part of this offense. We'll see a lot of him throughout the year. Also looking at this wide receiver room, Neek Preston was another name that was a little bit down on the depth chart last year, but now a redshirt sophomore from Wilmington, Delaware. I would expect to see a little bit of him. Same with Luke Sabo, Luke Sabo, I believe, redshirt junior from Sparta, New Jersey. Another name that didn't get a ton of field time last year, but someone I would expect to see the field way more often than he saw last year. We also have Jamin Bryant, Gage Gers, Tyreen Heisen, Benny Lyles III, DJ Peener, as well as Trevor Armian, another familiar senior in that wide receiver room as well. So some names to watch in terms of throwing the ball for Kutztown in that wide receiver room. Of course, you have Luke Maxwell, who has been an absolute short yardage beast at the tight end position. He's really more of a fullback. The depth chart does have him listed, though, as a tight end. He was someone Kutztown went to all the time on third and short, fourth and short situations, and it was kind of like the Eagles' tush push, right? It was dang near unstoppable for opposing defenses. So he's someone, again, I would imagine to see big time in the running game. And I would expect this running offense of Kutztown to really be a focus this year. I think even a little more than we've saw in the past. I think they're going to try and run the ball. I think they're going to try and control the clock, play ball control football. They have their two-headed monster, only redshirt juniors, and Jaden Stewart and Steven Burkhart, who were a terrific 1-2 punch at the running back position last year. And then you pair him up, obviously, with returning redshirt junior Judd Novak, who is the very definition of a dual-threat quarterback, loves to use his legs, does so well. I would expect a lot of zone options, read options, giving Novak places to go with the football that we saw really start to be used last year. I would expect that to be ramped up even further this year. Some great returners on that Kutztown offensive line as well. They return 3 of their 5 starters from last year, named to D2 top 100 players to watch. That being Billy Everett. You have Billy Everett, Ryan Schrenecki, and there was one more on there, and Adam Conklin were the 3 kind of starting linemen. And only one, Billy Everett, a redshirt senior, but Adam Conklin, a redshirt junior. Ryan Schrenecki, redshirt senior. So kind of the end of this, offensive line era that we've sort of seen. Kutztown has had a very good O-line for a number of years now, and I mean, that's how you win football games, right? They're won in the trenches. And then speaking of the trenches, the D-line is shaping up to be pretty much just as dominant. Freddie Redder is back for another year, a redshirt junior. There was a little bit, of speculation, at least with us here on KUR and the rest of the football community. If would Freddie Redder be coming back? Would he be playing again? He is. And I would argue he's even scarier. He's 6'3", 260. After the football season, decided, all right, I haven't wrestled in a number of years. I'm going to go and just join the wrestling team and just kind of see what happens. And what did he do? Placed like top 8th in the country. Was an absolute, freak of nature to watch on the mat. Dominant wrestler, super impressive. And just, he wrestled in high school, but, not at the collegiate level. Just decided, I'm going to go pick up wrestling. And, was one of the best wrestlers in the country in his weight class. So I would imagine that experience would certainly help him on the football field as well. I would expect to see a lot of him. I would expect him to be a game wrecker as well. Kyrie Butler, Mikey Gray are 2 other defensive linemen that really stood out to me last year. I would, again, expect the defensive and offensive lines for Kutztown to be very dominant. I expect them to play very well. And at the defensive back position, a lot of new faces as well. Lee Coleman, a returner. Zach Perza, Tyrell Ford. Some names there to watch as well. But I think the trenches is going to be a big focus for Kutztown this year. I would expect them to use their tight ends a lot. I would expect Novak to use his legs, so run-pass options. And, of course, some airing it out when the ball needs to be thrown down the field. But I would expect this to be a run-first football team. We've seen a lot of, at the D2 level that it can be dominant. Harding, I don't have the exact stats in front of me. I can get them up. But Harding basically won the national championship, never throwing the ball. They ran a wishbone offense, and they just ran it down everyone's throats and won the national title. Super impressive. So this, you can win that way. You can win by running the ball first. You don't have to be a pass-first team in the modern era of this game. Harding showed firsthand that you can absolutely win being a run-first team. I'll try and get their exact stats up here in a moment just because it's incredibly impressive just looking. So they averaged 48 points a game. They also had a terrific defense, which doesn't hurt. They held their opponents to 11 points a game while scoring 48 themselves, doing so, in general, on average, of 276 rushing yards to 32 passing yards, which is almost unheard of when you look at the modern game. And then this year they did go 12-2, but they've always been national contenders over there in Harding. Take a look. I forget when they went down in 2024. I want to say they went down in round. That's what it was. They went down. It was in the national championship game. They went down against Ferris State, really in dominant fashion. Ferris State proved to be the team to beat. And Shippensburg really held with Ferris State in that semifinal for a good amount of time. I remember watching that game. Part of me a little bit bitter that Kutztown was not there because they had lost to Slippery Rock the week prior. And I was watching it thinking, Kutztown could hang with this team, and I do think they could. I don't think this is a team that's window is completely closed in the national picture. I think there is a little bit of identity shifting that might have to happen, but I think with Coach Clemens and his staff, he does a terrific job. I really approaching things one game at a time. One game in front of every rep, every series, every down, every practice going 1-0, Harding was not a national championship game. That was a couple years prior. That was in the quarterfinals. And then it was Slippery Rock against Ferris State, who gave them a run for their money. It was 48-38. It was a high-scoring shootout of a game, but Slippery Rock, just fell short on the road. And then it was Valdosta State that fell to Ferris State in McKinney, Texas, in the D2 national championship game, 49-14. So Ferris State certainly the team to beat this year in 2025. That third region, in the super regions, has always been an absolute problem for the rest of the country. Kutztown has represented Super Region 1 well in the last couple of years, as has Slippery Rock. But that's Super Region 3. Typically, if you come out of that region on top, you're going to go and win the national championship game. That's kind of the way things have been in the past for, at the national level for Division 2. But it all starts week 1 against Assumption. That's a game we'll have coverage for here on KUR. A little bit of a shameless plug. We'll have that for you live on the airwaves. It's going to be an exciting game. Make sure you guys go. Pack the stands. It's always fun. Andre Reed. The place can get loud. It's a great environment. Marching band is terrific. Concessions are great. It's really a great time. What else are you doing on a Thursday night, right? It's week 2. Can't be that much studying going on. So hopefully we'll get a great turnout there. For Kutztown football's home opener. Same thing with the field hockey home opener as well. Both those games, in the same place, same campus. Go support both those teams. Lots of things to like about them. But we'll take a break here on the Golden Hour. Some soccer and volleyball discussion coming up when we come back. Thank you all for listening. back here on the program. Moving in to Kutztown volleyball. And Kutztown, the volleyball team is a team that really struggled in 2024. Went 1-27, just was winning one match in that year. Since then, have lost their head coach, beginning a new era. They have hired a new head coach as a result of a national search. His name being Jason Barshinger. Barshinger brings 5 seasons of collegiate men's basketball experience to the Golden Bears. He most recently led NCAA Division III college Bryant Anthem. That was since 2023. He quickly, to raise the level of play, it was in just his second season as a varsity program when he arrived in 2023. They won a program best 12 matches and enjoyed their longest winning streak in history of 4 in 2024. He mentored the first United East first team selection, the first one in program history, and boasted 4 all-conference selections, a senior scholar athlete, and 4 Players of the Week award winners overall. The Lions ranked 8th in NCAA Division III in aces per set and 20th in digs per set during the 2024 season. So a super competitive team over there at Binghamton. Prior to arriving there, Barshinger was the first head volleyball coach at Wilson College from 2015 to 17. The Phoenix, they developed into a 8-win program in just their second year of competition. In 2017, Barshinger relaunched the women's volleyball program as head coach at Central Penn College from 2012 to 2015 and had the team winning 15 games by his 3rd season. So certainly a lot of history there for Coach Barshinger of taking a program that has had some struggles, or in this case, or in a lot of cases, we're just starting out, and turning them into a winning program in a short period of time. Something that he will be looking to do with this Kutztown volleyball team that, like I said earlier, certainly has an uphill battle ahead of them, winning just one match in 2024. That one was against Chestnut Hill on September 30th it was against Caldwell. That was on their home floor by a score of 3-1. Other than that, it was a tough year for the Golden Bears. They were competitive in most of the games that they played, and a lot of these, it wasn't like they were getting blown out. But just towards the end of sets, they kind of just ran out of gas. The very young roster didn't really have the experience to go the distance against some top D2 teams, and that the season was what it was. But it gets underway in 11 days for Kutztown. They will start against Chestnut Hill on their home floor. That is September 5th, which is Friday. So a day after the football and field hockey home openers, the volleyball team will open up their season as well. Then they head out to Lincoln and Holy Family the next day on Saturday for a tournament in Philly. And then again, Kutztown will host the Shannon Sullivan Memorial Tournament. They did so last year. 3 teams being Bowie State, California University of Pennsylvania, and then Caldwell. Those are the 4 teams that will make up that round robin tournament. Each team will play each other one time, mostly for experience purposes, but also in memorial of Shannon Sullivan. Then they'll head out to Buffalo, New York for another tournament with Frostburg State, Assumption, and Slippery Rock before returning to their home floor against Georgiancourt on September 25th. Then again, they'll see Lincoln, Goldie Beacom, Jefferson, Westchester, Millersville, Shepherds, Shippensburg, Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, East Stroudsburg twice, once on their floor and then once on East Stroudsburg. Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, Westchester, Millersville again, Shepherd, and then Shippensburg once more to round out the regular season for Kutztown. So certainly, as close to rock bottom as you can get last year for that volleyball team. So the only way to go is up. They were picked 8th in the PSAC East preseason poll. But on, in their new direction, it's a bit of a new day for this volleyball team. And they had a really young roster. That is, I think, the biggest caveat. Yes, it was a very tough season for a lot of the team last year, but it was a young team. They return a lot of those freshmen and have gained now some experience in upperclassmen, sophomores, juniors, a few transfers in as well. So certainly hopefully some brighter days upcoming for the Kutztown volleyball program. They're a new head coach, and we await to see, what their season opener will look like on the 5th. So we'll switch gears once again. Kutztown soccer team, it was just coming off a very successful season. We'll round out our season coverage here of fall sports here on the Golden Hour. Again, I'm Tommy Scuderi with you. Golden Hour is your weekly home for all things roundups, insights, interviews, and discussions about Kutztown sports. But the Kutztown soccer team is on one of its most successful runs, really, in program history under Eric Bernstein, head coach. He's in his 18th year as head coach of the Kutztown soccer program. As they get ready for their 42nd season of play in 2025 as a program. They went 12-5-6 last year. A lot of draws towards the end of the season, but not something that really seemed to affect this team much, as they were unbeaten on Keystone Field, 6 wins and then 4 draws over there. It was his first undefeated home mark in program history. They appeared on the United Soccer Coaches National polls pretty much on a weekly basis, and they are once again receiving votes to start the 25 season. They were able to go on the road last year and knock off Westchester, which was the defending PSAC National Championships, while ending their NCAA tournament appearance streak of more than 2 decades. So big win there for the Golden Bears before ultimately defeating Gannon as well. They reached their 7th PSAC championship game in 2024, and then where they ultimately fell in that game before recording a win in the opening round of the NCAA tournament against Charleston before losing against Gannon on the last second goal. So certainly a lot of things to like for this Kutztown soccer team. We'll talk a little bit more about it in just a moment. We'll step aside here in the Golden Hour. You're listening to the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. Back underway here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. Final few minutes here of the first edition of the Golden Hour. I'm Tommy Scuderi here with you as we finish up the last fall sport to be discussed, which is the Kutztown soccer program. They return some dominant players in Corrine Morgan and Caroline McDonald, as well as the goalkeeping duo of Morgan O'Donnell and Cassidy House. They also get back senior defender Skylar Jordan and junior midfielders Maura Day, Mary Nagel, and are among some of those players that are coming back for the soccer team. There is a big turnover, though, for the program, as Bernstein will have to see a large chunk of his starting 11 departing, to graduation some years, from last year. The squad will have 11 freshmen making up their roster. It looks to elevate some of those sophomores and juniors into bigger roles than they saw last year. Kutztown, they were picked to finish 3rd in the PSAC East preseason poll, slotted behind PSAC champion Shepherd, and then conference rival Westchester, who Kutztown ended their season in 2024. All garnering some first place votes. Bloomsburg, East Stroudsburg, and Millersville are seen as top challengers for the East's 4th postseason berth. They will open the season on the road against Concord on September 4th. So not here like the football and field hockey teams. They will travel out to Athens, West Virginia to face Concord, then head out to Mansfield on the 6th before their home opener on September the 10th against Millersville. They'll see Lock Haven on the 13th, Shepherd at home for youth soccer night on the 17th, September 20th against East Stroudsburg at home, on the road against Westchester and Ship, back home against Bloomsburg, out to West Virginia again, this time to Shepherdstown to face Shepherd on October the 8th, The 11th is Senior Day at home versus Lock Haven. Millersville on the road on October 15th. Back again, they'll see Mansfield again, this time at Keystone Field on October 18th. Westchester on the 22nd. And then 2 road games at East Stroudsburg and Bloomsburg before a final home game on November the 5th against Shippensburg to round out the regular season. So lots of things to be excited about for all 4 of these Kutztown programs. Field hockey, volleyball, soccer, and football. Big home openers next week as the final bit of preparation and preseason kind of comes to an end as classes start here. Teams will finish out this week and early next before shifting to game mode for their respective openers. And just the last topic here to touch about. Another big coaching change was announced a couple weeks ago, and it was head coach Bernie Driscoll, who decided to retire after 24 years as the head coach of the Kutztown basketball team. That was announced on August 11th, so a few weeks before everyone came back. Driscoll decided, to step into retirement, and it is a welcome one as well. He's been a long-time staple of a great program, has certainly earned his retirement. I, have a great personal relationship with Coach Driscoll over the last couple of years. Was super helpful to myself in the radio program and coverage of his games. Would always give us scouting reports and game plans and detailed breakdowns of his team, the opposing team. So we were always in the know from a broadcasting perspective. Because of Coach Driscoll, he wants to travel. He'd like to see London and Ireland with his wife and 3 grandkids. Coach Driscoll had 360 career victories, which was more than 200th ahead of the second place on the Golden Bears all-time list. So by far the winningest head coach in the program's history. He is a 4-time PSAC East Coach of the Year, and he guided Kutztown to 6 division titles between the years of 2007 and 17. He is 4th all-time in career victories among PSAC East coaches, but there's a lot of long-time coaches in the conference. So certainly an impressive track record for Coach Driscoll as his career will come to an end. He thanks, the players, coaches, staff, many great professors at Kutztown. And then his final message to the team was just, go win the PSAC East. Quite the competitor, is stepping into retirement. So just a congratulations, health and happiness to Coach Driscoll as he rounds out a great career. Tom York, who is the associate head coach, will be the interim head coach for the 25-26 season. He has some coaching experience at Kutztown. He led the women's program from 1987 to 1994 for a number of years before jumping over and being a member of Coach Driscoll's staff. The university will do a national search, but that will not be until the conclusion of the basketball season, which will get underway in about a month or so. Under head coach Tom York now instead of head coach Bernie Driscoll. So that is the other big news in the Kutztown sports world that happened over the summer. So a happy retirement to Coach Driscoll. As the last major announcement was the announced renovation of Keystone Hall, which will begin in 2026. Lots of great sketches have come out with that. Lots of things to be excited about with the new Keystone Hall. I'll take a quick look here at what exactly will be changed. But there's new locker rooms, some new seating arrangements, new fronts, new team locker rooms, updated office spaces, new bleacher system, restored floor. There's going to be a press box and lounge overlooking the arena, which I know for me the big disappointment is this is happening in 2026. where I will be gone. So I will not get to see what this renovation will ultimately look like. But for years to come, it's certainly a well received addition, as Keystone Hall is has a bit of I don't want to say bad memories, but it's certainly teams have wanted an upgrade for a while. It was built in 1971, so certainly is due for one. It will open in January of 2028. Now, where the teams will play in the meantime, once I assume it will, courts and stuff will be kept intact, but it's going to have climate controlled HVAC, three team rooms for, film and study halls, new locker rooms, including for the football team, basketball, wrestling, swim team, sprinkler system. It's getting an updated ticket booth, um, fully enclosed and renovated wrestling rooms. So all kinds of upgrades, really for a Kutztown athletic program that has been doing very well, really across all sports. When you think about the facilities here at Kutztown, they're certainly not terrible, but when you look at kind of around the rest of the conference, it's certainly some things that are left to be desired. So the fact that these teams have had the success that they've had with the facilities that exist already is certainly a positive sign that now the university is investing a little bit more in upgrading these facilities. How much better the performance will get on the field as well. So that's your sports news really for the summer as we look at the new seasons. We'll be back every week here Mondays at 2 p.m. We're gonna have some fun guests. We'll get some cool interviews, as well as have a little bit more to talk about. Once seasons get underway, we'll give you breakdowns in the games, game plans, matchup previews, anything that you could possibly want for all things Kutztown sports throughout the year. So thank you all for listening. I've been Tommy Scuderi here on the Golden Hour, and we will get you back to your regularly scheduled programming here on KUR.